Okay. We'll call the meeting to order, and we have nobody online, so we do not need to do introductions at this time. Or do we have somebody new?
No, I think everybody knows everybody.
As long as there's no one online to tell who's here, we can skip the introduction. And do we have any additions to the agenda before we approve it?
I don't think the staff do not have anything, so unless someone from the committee does.
Do we have a motion to approve?
I know.
Any second?
I'll second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No, you can. You can for this one.
Oh, I can for that.
Yeah, because you're a committee member. No. Technology policy people, board members can vote. This is a joint committee.
Oh,
I thought before I keep my mouth shut for that one vote that was a little bit borderline. What was that?
That was on the, we were looking at just the committee's membership, and so the thought was that it would be best if the committee voted on that. Okay. But no, this is a joint committee, so you get to vote.
Yeah, I did too.
Oh,
okay.
We don't have a whole lot of controversial votes.
Okay. So if we do, we can pretend this way or that way, we don't.
Right.
Okay. With the agenda approved, we'll go on to the special election.
So we have just conducted an election, and the small public library representatives included Michelle McGuthrie from Wabasha Public Library. The SELCO office received a phone call from the Vice President of the Library Board. This is March. So after the morning after their February board meeting, and the library board and Michelle have severed their employment relationship. So that position is open, and being that the election was just held, to just leave it vacant would mean that it would be vacant for 3 years. So yeah, I thought, well, we really don't have a mechanism for a special election. I have wanted to have a discussion with you today as the committee whose member has left. But my suggestion would be that we go ahead and do a special election and do a call for small library nominations and have that position filled rather than leaving it open. If the small libraries choose not to nominate anyone and leave it vacant, that's different in my mind than this administration, this group, leaving it open for potentially 3 years.
You mean public libraries in general?
Public libraries in general. Yeah. So that's one of the confusing things. The election is for the small library representatives, which means it has to be someone in one of the small libraries under 3,000 population. But any public library director, large public library, medium public library, can make the nomination, and all 37 public library directors can vote. It's just that we're trying to divvy up the votes on this group by type of library or size of library because of the challenges that differ in each of the communities. Thank you, Tyler. Okay, I saw a lot of head nodding. We'll do it by consensus. Tyler will do a call for names, so hopefully we'll fill that vacancy. Okay.
Do we have some input from one library rep today? Don't all speak at once. By a period of time. Technology project report. I don't know.
All right. There we go. Give the projector a minute to catch up. As usual, we have cooperative technology purchases going on. The deployments for the fall purchase are finished, and we had 18 libraries purchase 33 PCs and related items in the winter 2015 purchase. At the time the slide was created, deployments were complete at 11 of those libraries. So we're moving right along. Yeah.
Is Austin in that set of deployments? So Austin had a lot of extra work.
I would have to look at my notes to tell you. I don't remember off the top of my head. Find out.
Nope, I should have asked you, like, when I saw these before the meeting. Not to worry.
The 2015 PC lease is complete. 31 PCs and 23 monitors were leased for 2 libraries. Those 2 libraries were on previous leases with 13 PCs and monitors to be shipped back to Dell. And all those deployments and shipping is all complete. We're done with that for the year. The Pharos upgrades that I've talked about on and off at meetings for quite a while now are finally complete. And much like painting the Brooklyn Bridge, there is another Pharos update that we're looking at. We're probably going to give it a little time, though, before we start on that one, since we're just now finishing this one. But we're glad to have that finished. We just recently completed an upgrade of the switches in our server room. That was done on Friday night, March 6th. That project was successful. It involved bringing down all of the network and replacing with new equipment. Pizza was consumed, a lot of soda was drunk, some late night hours were put in, but it got done on time. So with that, we have now replaced just about everything in the server room over the last 3 years. So we have almost an entirely new network infrastructure. We're going to talk later on in the agenda about notice customization and automation, so I'll just leave that one until then. As many of you are probably aware, State Library Services has announced that statistics for public wireless sessions, which are currently an optional part of the Public Library Annual Report, are going to be required for the 2015 report, which libraries will be compiling next year at this time for calendar year 2015. We just became aware of this in February, so we do not have a solution in place right now to do that. It's possible to think that the wireless access devices simply have a switch that you can flip for that, but that is not the case. There has to be some kind of third-party solution in place, either homegrown or commercial. We are developing a system that will work at all the different libraries, which use a range of different pieces of equipment, some supplied by SELCO and some not. So we have something, and we are working on testing it. And one of the libraries that has agreed to help us test it is Stewartville Public. So thank you very much.
I'm in our library right now working on it.
Yes, it's being set up today.
So we know what the state wants for statistics?
We were informed on the when the annual reports were released for 2014 in the 1st of February, and the instructions. With that, when we were informed.
So you know what to collect at least.
Yeah.
We know what statistics they want, yes.
We know what they're asking this year.
Is it crazy?
No, just public Wi-Fi sessions. But that's public sessions as opposed to staff.
And how you got the Pharos thing, but you don't earmark it for wireless.
Well, Pharos doesn't have anything to do with wireless.
Never designed to do that.
No, Pharos doesn't do anything with wireless. So no, we had no solution in place. We have always offered the libraries that purchased Wi-Fi services from us the option for something like that. But no one had ever taken us up on it, so we didn't have a solution in place.
Aren't most libraries open? Besides, we don't even have a login process for wireless.
For most, that's correct.
Wasn't that the overall goal? So there is no tracking on users because that
is correct. It has.
And, how are you going to track the person who drives up into the parks in front of the library at 2 o'clock in the morning?
It has long been an optional statistic on the annual report, and I don't know how many libraries have generated. I think Plainview has a system in place that they've designed themselves that's been counting this, so they were a little ahead of the curve on that. But we had not put anything into place for everyone else. We have something now. I could not even begin to tell you all the details. I would need Tom here, but it involves redirects and some HTML pages and web services that will track patrons clicking a splash screen for access to the network, much like you would see in a hotel or a coffee house. and that's how we are going to do it. But because we do have lots of libraries with disparate pieces of equipment, we are testing at 2 sites. We're going to test at a site that's using SELCO provided equipment and another library that's using their own. And we've tested it internally, obviously. We did that first. Now we're testing it at Stewartville and another library that's yet to be determined. And then once we're confident in that, we'll go ahead and roll it out to everybody. We are having a conversation with Library State Services to make sure they understand that because we didn't hear about this until a month into the year, that for the first part of the year, we're going to have to fudge this first time around. But that's not unusual. Libraries don't all have door counters, but they do provide stats on people coming into the building. So there are low-tech ways of doing that, and that's going to have to be acceptable this time around. So that's been one of those, oh my gosh, drop everything, we have to figure this out kinds of projects that occasionally come up. So we're going to make it happen.
Donovan did ask whether or not he could write a tactful letter to the State Library Services, more just from the point of view of this is not an easy thing. We have done it. We would really appreciate maybe having known in November.
Or even before we budgeted for this fiscal year, in case we decided to purchase something, might have been nice.
I agree.
Sounds like the person that wrote it doesn't have any idea what wireless.
Exactly. I think there was an assumption that we would just flip a bit in the access point, and it would work. Of course, it's in the admin console, but it doesn't work that way.
This isn't just going to count things in our physical area, right?
No, it's going to count patrons who have gone into your Wi-Fi and actually clicked the splash screen saying, I acknowledge that I'm using the library's Wi-Fi.
We supply the Wi-Fi for the whole building, which we share.
Yeah, we will have to probably work with you on that. There are lots of different wrinkles at lots of different libraries.
Yeah.
We've tried to create a solution that is sort of the lowest common denominator, so that gives us some room to tweak at different locations. That's why we went the route we did.
But Peggy, I would think that if you, as the library, if you are providing it to City Hall, even if it's City Hall using it, it's still library.
Well, that's kind of what I think so too.
Yeah,
I count everything.
I think we would want to talk with Reagan since she's more familiar with the report itself, but I think it's written broadly enough that you can interpret it that way if you choose to.
I mean,
I
why would a city manager using his iPad in the City Hall on your router be any different than the car that drives into the parking lot at 10 o'clock?
Well, I agree.
Right.
And we also have areas outside the library that we have purposely put there for wireless.
Okay.
Just for
Well, so Donna is going to write a very polite letter just to sort of make the statement, and then I have added it to the March system directors meeting because I know for a fact that many of the other regions don't have the kind of talent pools that we have. So how are they handling this?
So it's a hiccup. It's not a huge crisis, but it was certainly something that we were planning on working on in February. All right. I mentioned earlier that we were replacing everything in our server room. The UPS upgrade was part of that. We carried that upgrade out on February 7th, and everything went as planned, except that when of course, we had to shut everything down because we're replacing a part of the electrical system. When we brought everything back up, our router failed. The power supply on it blew out, which will occasionally happen once in 1,000 times when you restart a piece of electronics. Fortunately, we had planned for this and have always kept a redundant router. It's sort of sitting in a box. I'd like to say it's in a cool glass case with a siren and a hammer, but it's not. It was in a cardboard box waiting to be used. In the end, we decided that rather than plug it in and try to make sure that it was properly configured, instead we just opened it up and took out the power supply and replaced it in the other box after determining that they truly were the same make and model, which they were, and that fixed the problem. So we had everything back up on time, just with a little more excitement than we would have liked. And I'd like to point out, we don't know exactly when that UPS went into service. It was here when we moved into the building in 2000, and I'm not sure how long it had been here before. Ann and I were talking about that. We certainly got our money's worth.
I'm going to say that it had to have been pre-1996, and I'm only going to guess that because when I took over, we changed audit firms. The board wanted more than one, and it really was one man who did our audit. And because the previous director had been here for so long, they wanted a nice, clean break with the audit. The audit turned out fine, but it was after that first audit of the 95 year, or the 96 fiscal year, in 96, that we actually created a fixed asset list. So if we don't have a date on it, it was before I took this job. So we got our money.
We did, absolutely. So about 20 years probably.
And it used to be a big box, and now it's
With the new UPS is much
a
smaller.
little.
It's a little small. It's about the size of a conventional physical server now.
Right.
It sits in the rack even, as opposed to taking up an entire quadrant of the room.
That was convenient.
So yeah, Amy and I can't figure out when it was purchased. It's been that long.
That's the end of my report.
Cool.
Any more questions? Okay, we'll move on to the notice update.
Want to take over, Cheryl, or just give me the pointer to proceed?
Yeah, I'll just let you know when to go to the next slide. Okay, so I'm just going to, the last few meetings I've kind of done updates and background information on what we've been working on for notices. So I'm just going to give you an update. You can go to the first slide, Donovan. So just so you remember, there are basically two types of notices. Pre-overdues that we've been working on. The pre-overdues or courtesy notices are the ones that go out only by email, and they go out 2 days before the item is due. You can change that. I don't think anybody has, but you can change that. There's more customization in it now. And the auto notices, these are your holds, your loss, your first, your second, your third overdues, your finals. And these go out in two formats, email and print. So I think the next slide, where we're at currently, is that the pre-overdues, those courtesy reminders that go out 2 days before by email, were automated in the fall. There was much rejoicing of the staff here so that we didn't have to send those on weekends and in the morning. So 38 libraries are utilizing those. That is one more library than the last time I gave you an update. Another school, I think Chatfield High School was the one that added it on. So I set them up with it, and they have their students all have emails in their accounts, so their students get the pre-overdues as well. And then auto email notices. This is now completely automated as of February 24th. So I hit my own goal in my head, which was to have this done before the MinLink vendor demos. So that's done. So what this means is your auto notices, like Albert Lee, I worked with Teresa on that. Your first, your seconds, your thirds if you send them, your fourths if you send them, the finals, your loss, your holds, they go out by email. The holds in particular are going out, I think I have them going out 6 times a day. So if you check something in, if you do your tubs at 10 in the morning, then at noon the email will go out. So it's not waiting until the next day at 1:30 or whatever. So they go out more frequently. And there are new notice types that were not available before, but with this new script they are. These include things like overdues. So that is the day something becomes overdue, you can email the patron to say this is overdue. Some people are taking advantage of those. There's hold expiration notices to remind you that you have an item that's on the hold shelf and it's going to expire in a few days or 5 days or however you want to set that to. And there's one other one that I'm forgetting off the top of my head, but they're all by email, so you can send them and you don't get charged. So that's where we are currently. I think if you go to the next slide. Oh, no, I have a little bit more on this. So there are 37, no, next slide, sorry.
She had more on that
Topic, sorry. 37 locations. This is the same number of locations. It is not the same exact locations. We had one location that decided to, in order to set this up, I contacted each library and I said, these are your options. Let's work together to transition you from one workflow to another. Libraries, I was able to adjust their workflow in some way. One library was not comfortable worked, so they decided to just do their own notices. So they're doing all their own print and email notices. And then we had another library, Brad, who had been doing his own notices and had to automate it. So 37, but the libraries have changed a little bit. And that's, yeah, next slide, please. And so where we are now, we've got the first two parts done. Now I am in communication with the company Unique Management for setting up the setup documentation. They have to send that to me so I know sort of what I'm going to be sending to them for them to handle our print notices, essentially. So I mailed them a couple ago. I heard back from the vendor yesterday, and he said he's been out traveling, so he's going to get back to me. He said today. I haven't heard from him yet, so I'll follow up with him today or tomorrow. But basically where we're at this point is he's got to send me documentation that tells me what they specifically need, and I kind of have an idea of what they're going to need. And then we have to talk about pricing, and that's sort of the next major hurdle at this point. And there's really been no discussions about pricing at this point because I'm still waiting to get more information from Unique Management. There's been some general conversation from them that for each block there is a fee, each customized block. So if Albert Lee wanted a separate block language than Plainview, there would be a separate $500 fee if you could not share the language. So most of us are sharing the language, so that shouldn't really be hopefully a huge hurdle. There's going to be some variance, and I'm going to take a look at what we can sort of unify and take out. Everyone's pretty much saying the same thing, so we just have to make it one cohesive statement. And then the price per notice fee has to be worked out too. It is sort of how we charge right now is a flat fee plus postage, and it will be that as we move forward too. I just don't know what that's going to be per se yet. Let me think if there's anything else I'm leaving out. No, I think that's it. So I think the next slide is just if you have any questions. Oh no, my print notices and numbers. Oh yeah, I worked on that. So just to give you an idea of what we're talking about, last year this is how many print notices we sent, 40,000 print notices. At 1:30 we generate, you guys have all done your notices for review, so then we go and do the notices output. Terry, Rachel, and Chris go into the notices room. They print it out on those crash mailers generally, so they're specific paper. And print them out, and then we have a little folding machine, and they fold them into thirds, and then they run them through the stamp machine. I've done this like once. I try not to do it. And then somebody has to take them to the post office on their way home that night. So just to give you an idea, that is about, we're pretty much right on target. February is always a little smaller because it's shorter months, and there's a holiday in there. So we're pretty much right on target to be at 40,000 again in 2015. Because we've done on average between 3,000 and 3,500 a month. So just to give you an idea.
The prices we checked on 6 months ago or so, and it was really cost prohibitive, like $100,000 one of them wanted.
Yep.
So you're just trying to get a better cost to see if they're even in. Okay.
The original 100,000 was based on the world as it was, with every single one of the 37 public libraries and any schools that were using notices where almost everyone's notice language for every one of their notices was bold.
Yeah, okay.
So rather than keeping the world the way it was, then
Then we've been trying to do this.
Cheryl's been trying to control, coerce people into, do you really need to say it this way or can you say it that way?
So that's some of it, and then also at that point we didn't know if we could have individual libraries' contact information in there without that extra setup fee, but we can. You all have to have the same logo if you want a logo on your notices, but you would be able to all have your, Albert Lea Public Library with your phone number and Plainview on your notices with your phone number, so they're not all calling Albert Lea because they're first alphabetical. So.
That really well. Okay. We're doing things though.
So if that answers your question.
More to come in the future.
So there will be, I'm sure. So, because there's a lot of things that I'm still waiting for them on. But that's more of the, so you know where we're at. I think the next slide is just if there's any more questions. Yeah. Oh, no, I don't have it. Okay. So any more questions? Okay.
Okay, if there's no questions, then we'll move to Donovan with the database cleanup.
You have been busy. In the last 8 months, the Joint Committee has recommended new procedures for streamlining 3 database cleanup processes. And since that has happened over the course of the months, we thought it would be good to take just a couple of minutes today and recap how far we have come since we first started talking about this last summer. So we started off with borrower record cleanup, which we talked about on and off all summer long. And finally, in August of 2014, this committee voted for a recommendation that increased the effectiveness of purging outdated borrower records, establishing a standard set of criteria for eligibility, and asking SELCO to take a little more responsibility for carrying out some of that reporting and work. So that has gone into effect. In November, this committee talked about BSTAT Cleanup, which again resulted in a recommendation from the committee to improve the efficiency of CI/CO BSTAT Cleanup. That recommendation tasked SELCO with running the reports for the online libraries, something that they had been expected to do in the past, and for us cleaning up the errors based on standardized criteria that this committee looked at in cases where the library does not act first. So we have seen a great deal of improvement in the CI/CO BSTAT.
And for the board members, CI and CO is very critical because CI stands for city and CO is county, and it's the county residents living outside the city limits taxing for library services. So it's the numbers that we use to generate funding requests. Thank you.
And then in January of this year, the committee looked at expired hold cleanup. That improved the accuracy of the bibliographic database by having SELCO automatically start marking missing items that have expired holds for an excessive period of time. Another task that in the past we had left to the libraries, we all agreed that we could streamline that and do it in-house and make that process work a little more effectively. So we have been busy. Yes.
That's the one, Cheryl, you were at 700 and some, February was?
Yeah. I haven't rerun it. No. What I've been doing is the libraries that had sort of the oldest ones, I'm giving them a chance to sort of search for them. So to do a final check before I start kind of massive deleting.
Maybe something in June?
Sure, I could bring numbers back in June. Yeah.
Some idea if it's, there was some that did pop up that have been open.
Yeah, yeah.
We can certainly do that. And today we're going to be talking about long-term transit item cleanup. So I put an exclamation, or excuse me, a question mark on that, and hopefully we will move forward on that and keep up this trend. So give yourselves a pat on the back. We have been busy. And that's all.
Okay. Any questions before we start long-term? Hey, Cheryl.
Okay, so the next item for cleanup. This actually is, if you go to the first slide, Donovan. So this actually started from a help desk ticket that came in early February. A patron saw something that was in transit and wanted it, so they went to their library desk and said, "This is in transit. I've been waiting for it. Why can't I get it?" And the staff member looked at the history, and it had been in transit since 2008. So
That's the best customer service in the world.
Well, obviously wasn't had a man.
well, so she, this staff member then contacted the help desk and said, "Isn't there some way of cleaning these up so that patrons aren't seeing these things and thinking they're going to show up in a couple days?" And really, it's been 7 years. So at this point, the libraries have sort of been responsible for running their own cleanup of in-transit items as part of their general collection maintenance, and some do it to more successful degrees than others. So I think if you go to the next slide, just to sort of explain, because there's some jargon involved here, there are 2 in-transit statuses with 3 display codes, because Horizon loves to confuse you. And there are others that we don't use, so I'm not covering those. Next slide, please. So there is the status code of TR, which displays as transit or in transit. These are items on their way back to their home library. So I've requested it, it came from Plainview, I returned it, it's now TR on its way back to Plainview. Next slide, please. TH is the opposite direction. So TH is the code for transit request. If you're looking in an item record, it's transit request. If you're looking in a borrower record, like in their list of their requests, it actually would say transit hold. So there's been, people do get confused about that. There's really only 2 statuses. They just, the TH, the holds, display differently depending on where you are in Horizon. So this is the item is on its way to fill a hold or a request. You did your pull list, you checked it in, it now says transit hold for the borrower. So they know that item is coming to them. All right, if you go to the next. So I ran this on Tuesday morning. There are 6,170 items in TR, so these are things going back to their home library. Of those, 2,148 have been in transit for longer than 1 month. Yeah, with 64 of them having been brought over in transit from DRA. So, yeah.
That was 2003.
Yes. And if I were to pull up Item Reporter for you and show this, there is 2003. There's blank ones, which were brought over from DRA. Then there's 2003, 2004, 2000. I mean, there's every year represented in that 2,148.
Like the Odyssey.
Yeah.
The 6170 doesn't surprise me because when you think about the fact that we handle about 3,500 to 4,000 items a day, the fact that you ran this and that something was in transit, now granted, of that 4,000, let's just say half is going out to fill a request and half going back to a library. But then that means you've got the person hasn't wanted in the gray tub, the schools only get 3-day-a-week delivery. That number is still, I think, a little high, but I could live with 6,100 just knowing how many books we handle back there.
But of those, that's what gets interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. I guess my other question is there a report we can run to see which ones?
Item Reporter.
Yeah, but is it,
I mean, there would be the generic item report in Web Reporter if you wanted to do that. That would be one way. Do you think of any others off the top of your head?
okay.
But generally, I recommend Item Reporter because you're right in Horizon, and you can just do your location and then do display last status update date. So, but yeah, so we've got a lot of things that have never made it home, or they've made it home and have never been checked in, or they've wandered off. We just don't know. But there is no real mechanism built into the system for suddenly changing these because we don't know where they are. So what would we change them to? So if you go to the next slide, Donovan, this is much better. This is more heartening because these are the ones actually going to fill requests. So we don't have a plethora of people, I mean just 275, going, where's my stuff, where's my stuff? So yeah, we have 3,500 items on their way to fill a hold, which would match sort of what you were saying, Ann. And some of those, prior to January, I moved these around at the last minute. Now I'm trying to remember what I moved. So I put longer than a month because for something to be in transit or transit hold for a month is a pretty long time. I mean, even a couple of weeks is a long time.
Well, and if you go back a slide, I just did the math. Of that 6170, if you add the 2148, 1993, and 1332, you come up with 5,473. So if you are looking at stuff that's newer than 1 month in transit, you're only looking at about 700 items, which again is a number that's acceptable. I was rolling all those transits together.
Yeah. The 2148, doesn't the 1993 part of the 21?
Yes, that's what you're about to say.
Oh, I was trying to make it really sound like that.
No. Sorry, that's, yeah.
Okay, so then it's about 4,000 items that are in transit of less than a month.
Yeah, that's not bad.
But you're heading home.
We're heading home.
Yeah.
But you also, I mean, you have to take into consideration that not every library is getting delivery every day. So there are items sitting back here or at a school or something waiting to be checked in. So I would expect this number to be a little higher.
Yeah.
So,
Couple days.
yeah. So,
And there are some schools that leave stuff on hold the whole time, even when it's checked out to the. They don't actually check it out. It's on hold the whole time.
that's a whole different issue.
Packing stuff, and they just have these shelves.
Reflected in this, right?
Yeah.
No, it'd be in the other one.
Yeah. But once
So they never check them in at the library at all?
once they check them in,
On the shelf, and the students take them.
but once they check them in at their library, you're saying they do or they don't check them in? They don't. So they would remain TH, okay, and go straight from TH to O, okay, or not O.
Part of the second
number. Okay, I thought, because once you actually physically check in a TH, it goes from transit hold to hold shelf. So it knows it's on your hold shelf, but you're saying they're not doing that.
They just put them on a shelf and students come and get them.